One dimension, make it that one.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Dorothy.
We've established that we have a quorum. Can I get an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Okay. We're here, should we close the door?
Yeah, I'll get it.
I got it.
I'll get it.
I got it.
Sorry, I keep running over your
It's
backpack.
because it's heavy as
It looks heavy.
anything.
Hey, Bert.
So we're here to discuss, Denise reached out to me, I think she discussed it with us a little bit in the, spring about the concerns the finance committee had. And she is here to discuss with us, over whether we should have some better funding criteria.
Well, basically, what the discussion was in Finance Committee was that, last year, as we know, we were significantly over in requests as compared to what the towns had allocated.
Yep.
And coupled that with that particularly the hospital was asking for a significantly increased, almost, well, nearly double what they had asked for before. So we were trying to find a way to set parameters that said, is there a way, say for example, I'll keep it simple. The town allocates $500,000 this year, and we get $900,000 of requests. And some of them are significant, say $200,000 or $300,000. Is there a way to set expectations for the requesters such that no one requester can have more than 25% or 20%, or whatever the number we think is fair, of the town's allocation? Because there's always a case to be made that X charity, charity Susie Cream Cheese, provides such a service, so we have to fully fund them, but then others lose out because they've then taken the bulk because it blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. So not to change the deliberation process, not to change the review process, but to set expectations of the requesters that you can't put in a request for what is, up to 50% or even higher of the town's allocation and expect to have it met. So then that way too, they understand that, okay, the most I can, if the total requests exceed the amount the town is allocated, then we as a group decide what the percentage should be. Is it 20, is it 30, whatever, the most that can be allocated. And then that way the requesters know through the whole process that they're not going to be able to get their full request, and they can start immediately fundraising what would be the gap. I realize it's a very long explanation, but that's the logic behind it. Mm-hmm. So then that way I don't come in and ask for $300,000 knowing it's mission critical for my business or for my charity, and I see that the town has allocated $400,000, so the most I could get is $120,000.
Right.
So that way I know I've got $180,000 gap that I'm going to have to meet. Now it doesn't mean I won't get the 120. It just means that. So that was the logic behind it.
Comment?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily in favor of it. I'm okay with saying you may.
Mm-hmm.
Not a hard and fast rule. I said these are the parameters within which we are working.
Mm-hmm.
You may only get 25%, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of explain to them how we deliberate, because the CPC runs into this every year.
Okay.
We run into $9 million worth of requests, and we have $2.5 million to give out.
Okay.
We can't tell anybody they can't apply for the whole amount.
Sure.
What happens when we get into deliberations is that I usually talk to a lot of them beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are repeat, they're some of my
Sure.
projects. And we say, look, come in with a priority list. Out of the $500,000 you're asking for, what can you get this year? What is gonna be critical this year? Mm-hmm. And break it down into multiple steps, because like the Methodist Church, we've been funding that for 14 years.
Mm-hmm.
But they know to ask very specifically every year because they've been through this thing that we go through here.
Mm-hmm.
So we stretch out.
Okay.
The thrift shop, hospital thrift shop, is coming in for the third installment.
Mm-hmm.
So we have multiples, and we've been on the African Meeting House for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
They come in with little bits, so they ask for the whole thing, but they know they need to prioritize coming in. I think that would be educational for our people. Prioritize what is absolutely critical. You're asking for the 500, but what's really going to promote your program this year? 140, that kind of stuff. I don't want a hard and fast rule that they're capped at 25%, but I think generally speaking, I'm in favor of it. But if we can give them 30%, because somebody else doesn't really
Need it,
need the
right.
5%. I don't wanna get ourselves boxed in, which is why the CPC doesn't do it that way.
Okay.
But we do tell them up front: prioritize, spread it out, because we may only be able to give you this much this year, and then come back next year, we'll complete the project. With the town clerk's project took 8 years. And now I've got the assessors coming in for the same thing, and I already talked to her.
Okay.
She's got a big $300,000 ask, and I said, split it into 3 years or 2 years before you even come in, because you're not gonna get the 300 if we don't have it. So that's the kind of conversations I'd like to have with these people.
With
That
the
would give them an idea.
I can speak to being the kind of the residual president of the 2 Center Street Restoration Project, which is the Methodist Church, and it's worked very well for us. Now, that building wouldn't exist except for the CPC,
Right.
because that congregation doesn't have any. There's
have any
what, 25
congregation.
they have 25
Right.
people in it, but they, you know, Jane Caracula, who's our treasurer, and Nancy Nelson, when I first
started
came in, we understood the process pretty well. So we understood. I can remember one year we had to roll the dice whether we were going to do finish the interior and take a chance that the roof would last one more year. And we figured, well, the roof was probably the last year, so we didn't try and come with everything at once.
I guess my other, I'm sorry, Dorothy, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think what I see as the difference is you have projects
Versus ongoing.
versus
right.
ongoing services, which is so completely different. And so I think
True.
it's really hard to say to somebody, prioritize what your service is gonna be this year when their services basically that they're coming in are a priority.
Yeah.
So I think and you're also looking at 500,000 versus 2-point-something million. You know, and I want to keep that in there. So it's not a project; it's a service. Which
Yeah, that was only my only question, is that unfortunately, if it was project based, it'd be quite easy,
It's very
right? But because some of it is, I need to provide these services, and I will stop providing them if I don't get the
It's the
money.
here and now.
Yeah, so
As I
maybe.
said, I don't have a problem with giving them sort of guidelines. I just don't want to box ourselves and say you will
Same.
not get more than X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we can do that in this type of environment.
I think the one I understand that, and I think the reason a couple things come to mind quickly, which is always good for me in the morning, is that if we, as in our first meeting, once we get all the requests if in our first meeting we look at the total that's been asked for and say, well, based on the total that's been asked for, if we do the math, if any one of them gets more than 25%, we're going to handicap others. So we as a group will deliberate based on that. And so we have, we've kind of set deliberation criteria.
Yeah.
Versus, because I was sitting here and thinking about, if you do the math and we say no more than 30% for anybody, and then we do that and we end up having money left over. So we end up giving somebody more than 30% after we said we weren't going to. So there's the until we know what the ask is, it's kind of hard to set the limits anyway.
That's why I'm worried about setting a hard and fast.
For the hard and fast
Yeah.
bit. But I would like us, if we could, then but I think to Linda's
Anticipate.
point, is to educate, particularly the hospital in Fairwinds, our biggest ask for the past couple of years that I've been involved,
year.
is that be prepared. We're going to be looking at keeping it within a reasonable framework, folks. So don't come in with double. And I got very concerned last year with the hospital's ask and the implication that services will stop.
Yeah.
And my
I
feeling
got very
was,
concerned about that. So we were trying to discuss that at FinCom as to
Right.
how do we give them an early warning signal and what's the best way about it. And that was really what all of this was about.
Warning
My
signals are
feeling-
great.
well, my feeling when we did the presentation at FinCom, and I think Rachel was with me, was that they had great concerns over the hospital
Yes.
and how much they were requesting
Yes.
and how much of our budget and
Yep.
it
Yes.
really, that was the only thing that went into great discussion was the hospital
Yeah.
and the funding there.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
we've labored over it here too. I mean, I've always expressed that, the thing that Mass General,
Yeah, but they don't have any affiliation with
I
them,
know,
and
that's what worries me.
that's the hard part. I mean, like,
Yeah.
unless you.
but they do have affiliation. They sucked up our hospital because they get the Medicaid rural hospital rate, which is higher than the city hospital rate, and they get to use that rate in Boston.
Correct, but the social service department is not funded
Right.
by
That's what worries me.
Mass General at all.
Because we say hospital, but it's really not the hospital, it's they're just in the hospital.
Yeah.
They give them space.
Right, they
Fairwinds they get their space from the hospital as well.
Yeah.
But that may be going away because they're doing 80 housing units over
Right.
there. So there's a lot of things at play, but that's what worries me about the human services part of the hospital, which is not really the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So people don't realize, we know it because we've had to deal with it every year, but the general public thinks that whole section, Peter McKay's section, is literally part of the hospital and that the hospital is paying for them. And when they find out that's not the case, it's just like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Or that Mass General is. It is in the
Yeah.
local hospital's budget. It is in
Right.
the local hospital. Rachel, can I ask you, do we know the amount set for,
450,000.
how much?
450 is level funded currently.
I'd like to
For the
go up, as I've
FY21
said in the
budget.
past.
So the fiscal 21 budget will be presented this Board of Selectmen meeting.
Well, this Wednesday?
So it's 450,000.
450,000 is what's currently listed and anticipated.
Can we ever go up? I brought
They
this
went
up
up
last
last
year.
year.
Well, we've gone up over the years as they have the funding. I think that the town does not have the funding to go up from what I've understood.
So
Fine.
I have mentioned that our request last year had come in much higher than what has been received. And at this stage, they were leaving it at 450 internally. But if that's something that this group feels that they would like to put forward or mention or provide to the select board or something in a recommendation, I'm not sure if the packet's already up, but that would be where I think that would be a good place to start, to say, like, we might have concerns that we'll be getting more requests again than we have funding for. I understand you're all speaking about the hospital. There is a letter, I was aware of it, but it has finally been received literally about 10 minutes ago as I sit here, from Fairwinds, that I think should go on your agenda for discussion for your next meeting as well. They are requesting a meeting with town administration to discuss additional funding needs that they have.
Well, the needs are going up.
So you will likely see an increase from the hospital, you'll probably see an increased request from Fairwinds. And both of those are the agencies that last year were,
The two
each
highest.
received 25% of the overall funding. So those two agencies, out of all that you awarded, granted, some only asked for anywhere between $1,000 to $2,000.
Right.
They received 50% of the 450.
Is
So-
this letter somewhat like the one that they received a couple years ago?
It's a little bit more in depth. The one that was received, God, I feel like that might have been 4 or 5 years ago now, but
Longer than
it's
that.
been a little while. It's a few pages long and there is data attached to it. I literally have I scanned it, but I was aware, and I did say that you guys were meeting. I was going to do everything I could to attend your meeting just to make you aware that there is a letter. The request right now is simply with town admin to see if there's additional funding. I don't want to get too involved in it. One, not having the letter, or two, it's not on the agenda, so to
Right.
speak. So, but that's just something to keep in mind, is those are the two large agencies. I understand what you're saying, but I would do the same, what you just recommended, and like, you don't want to back yourself into a corner. I also don't think you can, in application, say you will not get more than
Right,
this.
that's what I'm worried.
But it is the need to, in your deliberation, say, where is the true need? So if one agency gets the bulk of the money, if that's where the need was determined, then as long as you can back that up. But I do think it's gonna be based on what requests you get coming in.
Okay.
Is this something we should go to Selectmen's meeting on Wednesday?
Well, we'd have to
can't.
make a formal request, correct? Rachel?
Yeah.
You
Oh,
can
yeah.
attend and do
No, but I mean,
public
we have
comment
to-
all you want.
It may have formal request to increase ourselves.
But if you want, I mean, you could probably do a letter as well recommending that there is an increase because you anticipate concerns.
Well, you just say last year we were 70% above the allocated amount, or whatever it was, right? It was 738 to 450. So the math is around, what, 60% higher than what was allocated? We don't anticipate this year being any different from what we've heard. Therefore, we respectfully request that the town allocates 750 instead of 450, or whatever the number should be. 600 maybe, something reasonable. In anticipation of these essential services needing more support. the trend is going that way, or something like that.
And the needs aren't decreasing, that's
No,
the problem.
no.
Well, it's only
Needs for
because the
services.
population keeps increasing.
Well, the
I think.
needs
Yeah,
for
of
the
course.
services and economic stresses and
Yeah.
everything else here is just, it's not going away, it's
No,
just
it's
gonna
not
get
gonna go
worse.
away.
Especially if we head into a recession, it's gonna be really bad.
Yeah.
Rachel, when would a letter have to be submitted to the Board of Selectmen for this?
To get on the agenda.
Well, she closes the agenda like the previous week.
Yeah, so it would be,
You would have already had to have provided it if you wanted it in the packet for today,
We can
but,
get on next, right?
are they every 2 weeks now, or every week starting now?
it's every week,
Every week.
starting now.
Okay.
Erica is in the Suffolk class getting a certification, so she is not here on Friday, so it would have to be due by the Thursday before.
This
The
is
meeting.
this Thursday for next week.
So that would be this
Yeah.
Thursday for next week.
But it's already on there.
Yeah, I'm just trying to double
Well,
check
the
real quick
overall
for you
budget is
what
the
it
overall
specifically
budget.
says, but it's the
The overall
overall budget, but,
It's Brian's
usually what
presentation.
they do is that's where the recommendation is, because it's not part of the general fund budget, so that's usually where the recommendation is, where, how much goes to certain areas, and the human service line is within that
Because
presentation.
we're Article 10, right, not Article 8.
10 or 9? You don't
Because
remember.
CPC, all that stuff is
9?
Article 10.
Is it 10 or 9?
Is it
It's
9?
9, right?
And I think there's
Mhm.
capital crest is separate.
That, though, is not to designate the amount, that is
No.
to designate who's the contracts.
Yeah.
So the amount would be in Article,
I can never remember these things.
whatever, the
Yeah,
FY
One of
twenty-one
them.
budget.
Well, that's
article.
8. Article 8 is the big budget.
So then that's technically where it's buried within.
but there's still tons of budget reviews to go. I
Yeah.
mean, We
But
do
we
this,
don't-
we do this through the
Yeah,
end
we
of
should
January
do.
in FinCom.
We sort of have it on the agenda. We could always vote to have you send a letter
We won't make this week though, right?
No.
Make next week.
next week.
Do you want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Sorry. The review of fiscal 2021 preliminary general fund budget projections is on for Wednesday. That's under town manager's report. So you could still
Say we're making
bring
a
up or
request.
make something aware then. You could send your letter, and if it was sent before this meeting, I would assume or hope that it could maybe get to the select board members so they were aware of this going into that meeting, that they might themselves bring it up. But if you do want it as a formal agenda item, you make the request. There is a form that is now required to be filled out. I would probably have normally done it as the human service director, so I would probably still have to do it in order to get you as a formal item onto the agenda.
For next Wednesday.
If you wanted to do it as a separate request for next
Can we do
Wednesday.
I think it's best that we send a letter and do a formal request.
Yeah, because you want to put them on notice that
That we're
don't
gonna
go
be
too
making
far.
the
We're gonna be
request.
making the phone.
Don't go too far into your budget
Yeah.
because we may need more money.
Oh, the budgets
can we-
aren't fixed yet.
Do you wanna go Wednesday?
No, they're definitely not
I
fixed yet.
actually can't.
I can go Wednesday.
Wednesday. I can write a letter to the Board of Selectmen, which you can present to them and which we can send.
And then say we're making a formal request
And
and
then
on the
the-
agenda the following week.
Right,
Okay.
but I wouldn't make too much of a stink on
No.
Wednesday. I would just make sure that they have the letter and that we're doing the
And that
formal
they
request.
understand where we're coming. We're coming to them.
So the packet for Wednesday is already posted.
Yeah.
And there is a listing, it's under other articles in the FY '21 presentation. So there's unpaid bills, county assessments, reserve fund,
Good stuff.
all affordable housing trust fund, and so health and human services is listed. It shows 450 approved fiscal 2020, 450 projected expense for FY 2021.
I'll just let Dawn know.
So if you do a letter and you can get it to me, it can then be, but if you want it as a formal agenda item, you just
So
need
we're
to
gonna
be
do
quite
both.
clear what
Yeah.
you want it to say, and I will do the best I can to get that done today if you can get me a letter.
Okay, so let's talk with her about the formal request.
And I can go over that with
So then she
you
can,
at some point
she
too,
can do
Ann.
that.
Yeah.
And then I'll just let Dawn know that I'm just gonna have a quick statement about that the formal request is coming.
Yeah, and that's
So
all
they
we
know.
wanna say.
That's all we're doing. Given the level of essential services requests.
Yeah, I don't want any more than that,
No.
just so it's.
So they know
Okay.
it's coming.
So, let's discuss what we're gonna put in for that formal request.
$1 million.
Let's be realistic.
Okay, 950.
9999999.
Yeah, right.
I would think 750.
We'd be lucky to get 500, I'm thinking.
Yeah,
in my head.
if we ask for 750, maybe they'll give us 600.
What exactly, I'm sorry, I'm not.
That's okay, no, you're allowed.
What
to ask
exactly was the amount of requests that was received? Was it
753.
It was
Last year's like-
760 something,
767?
yeah.
Yeah.
So 750.
And I can't remember, but maybe you do remember. This was probably even before I started doing this, but way back when,
It was 900,000 at one point.
It was, I'm trying to remember.
that's what I was trying to remember.
When I
What
was first on, it was a lot more
It was
than the 450.
900,000, yeah.
And you remember when it was, the selectmen were still meeting in the courtroom? We were all there, and we had all of our vendors there. This is going back, 15 years, 12 years at least. And we were all there, and we had them speak about their individual needs, and to keep the money or boost it up. And I forget, we were successful at one point.
I wasn't a part of the board, but through the history,
Yeah.
I've read the history, it was 900 and something, then it went down to 200 when we went into the recession. I mean, they had
Yeah.
to.
And then it was 350.
Then we argued, then it was.
Yeah, and then we-
Years.
And then
Yeah.
we
4 or
sort
5
of
years.
quietly have asked
we
for more money.
inched it up, but it was
Yeah. But it was
I mean,
way up here to begin with, and we
Yeah.
serviced everybody's needs. We had a lot more applicants too. The library was involved with that group. There was
Strong
other
meetings.
groups that
There
were
was a lot
involved that
of
are not involved now, that have their own funding.
So is
So
it better to ask for 750, thinking that it's gonna get pushed down to 600?
Yeah.
Or to ask for 600 and be more
Realistic.
realistic? Because
Then they don't look at it and say, this is
Oh,
a
they're just
crazy
being
request.
whimsical, right? So what, it was 767 last year, not everybody gets what they want, da-da-da-da. So that's my question, because I don't know how it will be perceived as you're asking for nearly double,
We're
and,
getting too greedy.
yeah, so is 600 a better number, or?
I think
Knocked
it's-
down from 600. That's
But
what's
even if we
happened in the
but even
past.
if we get knocked down from 600 to 500, we gain 50, but we gain, you know?
Well, we got 50 last year.
But we can
Right.
substantiate.
You're
the
saying it was
756 or whatever it
900,000 at
was.
one point?
Yeah. It was.
I don't see that anywhere.
I'll go back, it was.
The 1995 forward is what I have, and it
Okay.
was about 412, 369, 397, 434, 465, 429, 429, 413, 329,
No,
At one point it was
330.
9, it was close to a
Well,
million.
because
The
we-
request maybe, but 331, 331,
No,
331.
Before that, Rachel, because the
Sure, it
library
goes
was
back to
in, the
95.
school.
I go back to
and stuff.
95.
Yeah,
Right,
before
but
that, the
before
library
that,
was
there was a
involved.
lot, it was huge.
There's like 20 other people involved.
Right, but I'm just saying,
It's been a long
you're
time.
saying,
Since
so
it's been a big number.
it's been
Or
averaged
ask for
between
650.
300 to 400 all the way through, and then
Closer
it
to what
was
the ask
dropped
was from
down.
last year. I'm comfortable, we can substantiate that ask.
I know, but.
It was
doesn't mean
dropped
everybody gets
down
what they
to
asked for.
317,883
So, to think that they
consistently
would-
for a
I
few
think that was
years.
650, I
So
would be
Rachel,
more
I have
comfortable
it
with.
at
I'm
some
listening.
point somewhere, the research on it, because I did it with Mary Ann. I went through all the papers on one of my first reports, so I'll find it and the year that it was, but I
was
understand what
huge.
Rachel's saying.
1895.
So I think what we, maybe if let's be realistic on a number, that they're gonna look at us and
650.
be honest,
I think
you know, let's
650 is a better
negotiate.
number than 750, because
Much
it's still
better.
some distance away from the full ask of
Mhm.
last year, and it accommodates that there is significant increased need on the island. And so then if it comes in at 600, and they do say, no, 600 is the best we can do, but, because if you ask for 600 and then it comes in at 500, well, we got 500 last year with the extra 50,000, or the
Oh,
40,
yeah.
not the 40,000 from Jetties.
Mhm.
I forget
So,
What?
Are we getting that again?
It's not that we're gonna get it, it's,
it went to a safe place, right?
the first year, but it's
First year.
not gonna.
Do you have any idea where it's going this year?
I don't wanna speak out of line, I've only spoken with the guys there.
It is
so-
a gift that they designated. It is not anything to do with the town's
Right.
designation.
I know, but it helps us because we
Then
don't have to give them
it to
the
them.
other 50. But do we know where it's,
40, it was 40.
Based on what happened with that last time, it was recommended that you treat that as a separate gift that is not part of your funding, because
Right.
it is not.
oh, I know, but the point is that that's 40 grand we don't have to
You
give
can take
whoever
that-
it's going to.
No, you can take that into consideration in
Right.
your deliberations, that you're aware that they're receiving an external gift, but it is no different than a gift or grant that any other agency would get.
Right.
You're not supposed to look at it like was done to say, we have 450, Sandbar's giving 40 plus, so now we have 490.
No,
You
no.
can take it into consideration the same way you would a private donation gift, anything from any other agency.
Right, but in my head, if
So you can't
somebody's
say, are
asking-
we getting it? 'Cause
No,
you're
I know we're not getting it, we didn't get it last year, but what I'm saying is that if somebody asks for 100,000, and we know that they're getting 40 from someplace else, that takes the pressure off of us to give them the 100,000.
Which they should be listing on their application to you like they do with every other
Right.
grant and donation they receive.
We know it's going to a human services person, don't they have to do that?
So Rachel, what exactly?
It could be somebody that doesn't even apply for a CRC gift.
Okay.
Rachel, what exactly do you, in order for you to fill out this form, do you need from a formal request from us?
I basically I think what you would outline in your letter, I would just list it. I will obviously have you approve it because it's probably going to be coming from you, even though it'll be coming through the Human Service Department. And ultimately what you do is you ask, this is what we want. You give a little bit of like a history or reasoning behind it, and then whatever supporting documents you choose to add to it. It's not overly complicated. It's just an official form. And if you want, I could send it to you so you can see it.
Would you please?
But if we can get that done and sent in, it's really the best way to get on the agenda clean.
I'll make a
Okay,
motion
so
to have Dorothy.
If you would just, hold on one second, Rachel, if you could forward me that, and then I'll, sit down tonight when I get out of work and, fill it out and get it to you tonight, okay?
Okay.
And then you can go from there, and then I will write a letter tonight, send it to Ann. If there's any editing, feel free to edit beyond Ann, and then we'll send the letter
Sure,
out,
it's fine.
okay?
It's just a placeholder to say we're coming.
Okay?
Yeah.
Just so everybody knows, okay?
I'll make a motion that we send a formal letter, getting on the agenda for. what
The
is today?
25th, will
Next
be the
week.
25th, yeah. I looked it up when we were talking.
God, end of September? The 25th of September for Select Board's agenda to discuss
Increasing
increasing
funding.
the funding for the human services.
And we're not gonna put the dollar amount tonight in that letter, we're just gonna say that we are, do,
Coming.
summary, and then
coming
say
with a
we will be
request.
coming in with a formal request.
Yeah, and
Rachel?
I think we should
That's up to
probably
you guys.
discuss now and decide, when they ask that question, well, how much do you want? Or how much are you requesting? We probably should say around, I'm happy with the 650 amount as
Yeah.
opposed to the 750.
Actually,
Yeah.
I put the number
I
in,
put the
Which
number
one,
in.
in the
Yeah.
might as
first
well,
letter?
might as
They're
well,
gonna have to think about it ahead.
because we're also not going to meet again to discuss the number again, so,
So I don't wanna stand.
No, I
back.
understood that, I just wanted to know if everybody wanted that
Yeah.
in the first letter.
yeah, I think you can.
And I'll go Wednesday and just say we're making a formal request to have a discussion about increasing the human services amount for CRC. Because the essential services are critical and they're increasing. And that's it.
Yep, perfect.
Well, I second Linda's motion.
All
All in favor?
right.
Okay,
Look at
it's
this,
easy.
it's easy. Okay,
That's what you said.
And as far as the 25% thing, I don't mind letting everybody know that because of, the ask amount versus the actual amount, you may not get more than 25%. I think we need to I do think we need to warn them, but I don't want to, again, make it a hard and fast 25%.
I think we could do it at the
present.
presentation when they come in, say thank
Yeah.
you for presenting and please understand that, because of the volume of requests versus the available funding, you may not get more than 25%. Do it that way.
That's great.
Or whatever
You
the
can say
number
may
we
not.
agree
Say
on
may,
before
use
the-
the word may, so
May.
it gives
May.
us the
May.
opportunity.
May is a big
Yeah,
difference.
I don't like the
May
word
not.
shall or will, I like
Yeah,
may.
May is
Yeah,
fine.
it's more flexible.
Productive,
Okay,
Cool.
okay, sounds good.
motion to adjourn?
All in
Second?
favor?
Do we know when our meeting?
Aye.
Oh, no,